A glorious and powerful morning to everyone. Good morning, good morning. It turns out that Kryvyi diplomacy is the most effective diplomacy in the world, and that's no joke. That's what some analysts are telling us. And here we're told that the task of Kryvyi diplomacy is to do everything so that Putin has no other path to choose. So, that very rude letter where Zelensky talked about Putin, said everything and called it a diplomatic open letter, turns out this really is diplomacy. So don't get confused, and now we're going to analyze this diplomacy together. Here, our sources include Ukrainska Pravda, an excellent Ukrainian outlet under certain assumptions, where they tell all sorts of things. And let's go. Basically, they're telling us here that it's the third one. In June, on the opening day of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, the city was attacked by Ukrainian drones. I talked about this. There really were difficult situations there. Several sites were attacked at once, and by the way, they're still attacking. And naturally, this drew the attention of both the participants, the city's residents, and international observers. Let's call them that. And after that, Zelensky published an open letter to Putin calling for a meeting and an end to the war. But again, here it's called a call to meet and end the war. But right from the first lines, it all starts with, "You're old, you this, you that, and I'm not going anywhere, but peace is needed." It was quite strange. The letter, again I'll repeat, was in no way diplomatic, but analysts are analyzing it. And Putin naturally refused to meet, and after that said there would be no peace, that Russia needs to continue what it is doing. So, and after that, by the way, I also watched a funny cartoon. You could say, well, not exactly a cartoon, but something like it. It was a parody of the Ukrainian reality, where Zelensky was saying, now we're going to insult Putin, and that's it, there will be peace, and now we're going to achieve all of this. And in the end, it all ended with a nuclear war. So, obviously, there's nothing funny about it, it's more like dark humor. But still, it feels like that's exactly what he's aiming for a nuclear strike to happen, and then I don't even know what after that. That's it. Right now, Zelensky is in an ideal position, he's being received all over the world. That's one. Money is flowing into Ukraine like a river. That's two, really. Even 90 billion euros are coming in. And then that same leader promised to throw in another 70 and another 7 billions. In general, there's just a ton of money there. Only billionaires have that much. It seems to me that only Elon Musk has more records. Bezos and Bill Gates. So there's a huge amount of money there, and obviously not all of it is spent on things that are really necessary. And most of it, well, they're building fortifications, making portable and advanced body armor and things like that. Alright, let's move on. Drones and a letter, apparently. This is part of a broader military diplomatic campaign by Ukraine, which should lead Putin to the idea that there is no alternative to serious negotiations. It doesn't seem like Putin wants to enter into quick negotiations according to the analysis. That's what these analysts say. But there are many indirect signals and hints from all global centers of power that by autumn, this situation may change, so he simply won't have a choice. Here, of course, the situation could change in different ways. I wouldn't underestimate Putin, but nothing good will come if something suddenly happens that really throws a wrench into things for many people. Here, again, I wouldn't be happy about that. Nevertheless, analysts say that we only need to wait until July, and then we can immediately see what Ukrainian strength is. But here, all that's left is to exclaim only Pisru shrinks, the spelling, pronunciation, and punctuation are preserved from the original source. Bandai happened, taking farewell zu podfilmowa falaru from the previous negotiation process is practically dead, it has stalled and is not moving anywhere. Etemevil is one of the members of the touching companies. And now the office of the Ukrainian president is trying to bring the attention of the US back to the negotiations, but nothing is working so far. And Kiev considers its advantage, as they claim, to be the increase in long-range strikes against Russia. Zelensky calls all this, well, let's remove this for ourselves. This is for Gaza, didn't you know? That's the head of Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Zelensky says that we have long-range capabilities. Yes, something about range, something like that. Sanctions, basically, like they used to say before, don't joke, don't make my Iskander laugh, and now these are long-range sanctions. So basically, the humor from both sides is pretty similar back and forth. And lately, let's say, the land bridges between the Mainland and Crimea are getting more complicated. A lot of things are being destroyed there. And those very drones have turned the Rostov-Simferopol highway into a road of death, causing a fuel crisis in Crimea. A lot of people write to me in the comments saying there's supposedly no crisis, but if you don't have a crisis, you can only be happy for those who don't, because most people do. And again, I don't want people to suffer. I mean, ordinary people, okay, there are politics and all these so-called powerful leaders. But when ordinary people, the nation, suffer, there's nothing good about it. Nevertheless, sometimes people surprise me by rejoicing in the suffering of others. Then he says, well, anyway, let's leave this topic for a separate episode or maybe even a stream. Write in the comments if you want to see a stream like this on some interesting, touching, or philosophical topics. In October or November, they say a chance for negotiations may arise. This isn't an Overton window or anything similar. And against this background, Zelensky has stepped up the pressure campaign on Putin. These are elements of that campaign. An unofficial letter was sent through the billionaire intermediary Roman Abramovich, and it was also publicly posted on the website of the President of Ukraine. I already showed you what was posted. You can't really call it a letter. It's more likely a speech script. 95 kvartal so that everyone would laugh, but for some reason when it was 95 kvartal there were still some clowns there, but they're not funny anymore. Yeah, it used to be funny, but now they're offering us these weird scripts. But it's not funny at all anymore, because all of this affects once again the lives of ordinary citizens. So, Abramovich tried several times to fix something, but he didn't succeed, including Zelensky, and also in the negotiations Zelensky was mentioned and they talked about him there. But the call for a personal meeting and negotiations between Zelensky and Putin also came in the form of an open letter. According to Zelensky, the main goal of this open letter is an attempt to impose their own agenda on Russia. Fiasco. To draw international attention to Ukraine. No one at the presidential office expected Putin to agree to end the war in June or July, but among Ukrainian interlocutors, another date is being mentioned more and more often, October to November. Write in the comments. By the way, how likely do you think it is that the war will actually end by the deadlines mentioned by this analyst? And here I've already mentioned that the US has stepped back from the process, I mean from the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. But suddenly the Ukrainians want to pull them back in, to bring everything back basically, and say, yes, let's negotiate with Russia again. All of this could start in July. European leaders at the upcoming G7 summit, which will take place next week in France, intend to use the meetings with US President Donald Trump. For what purpose? To involve him in the plan for the plant, the resumption of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. Here it turns out to be a bit strange. One step forward and two steps back on the one hand, but the negotiations were moving. That was the case in 2022 and in 2023 as well. There were some very clear outlines, and then somehow suddenly it all stopped. That is, there are occasional flashes of common sense among some representatives of certain countries, and they say that it wouldn't be a bad idea to start negotiating. And, for example, in Bulgaria, they stated that there is no other scenario except negotiations. Because there will be no military victory for either side, many people will die, and nothing good will come of it. But nevertheless, they keep arguing, they keep telling each other how powerful everyone is. And Europe, including the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, believes that the situation in the war has changed in favor of Ukraine, which creates an opportunity for new negotiations outside of the current conditions in Ankara. There are a lot of things mentioned here, and the most interesting part is that even the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, not the Ministry of National Unity, Mineda, which was represented by Chernyshov, and another one, so this other person, now being a supporter of Zelensky again, claims that it is impossible to change anything except by continuing to do what has already been done. Moreover, it's Kuleba who says this, the one who's ready to fight again with just the handles of entrenching shovels, what, in winter? So, Despite all these so-called powerful leaders now claiming that a truce might be possible, but there won't be any truce until autumn. And even then he says we need to prepare for the ground, for winter. Klitschko was preparing for the ground, we're preparing for winter. Who has it? And Kuleba says what will happen again, that's the question. As it was said in South Park in one of the scenes, I had a question. A pressing question arose for the public utilities. How do they deal with this yearly misfortune? Snow, frost, slush, ice, rain, and mud. There's storm drains, sewers, and everything else you can imagine get clogged. There's no answer yet, so we'll have to wait. Maybe here we have a ministry of rhetorical questions. Honestly, I doubt anyone can answer this question because all its employees are just too busy. But still, anything can happen, so once again, this is already the third time, in my opinion. As far as I can remember, this is the third article in just a few days where it is said that the leaders of this European trio want Russia to agree to several conditions at once, and some of them are quite strange. The first is an immediate ceasefire, the second is security guarantees for Ukraine, and the third, there are reparations and many other things. European countries now see an opportunity to play a more significant role in shaping the negotiation process. Here I have once again a question. Why? What has actually changed? It turns out that someone wants to see Europeans involved in the negotiation process. Why? For what reason? It's absolutely impossible to understand. But again, as I said in the previous video, well, let's invite Albania, maybe Latvia or Lithuania. They are in principle already participating and consider themselves quite significant representatives of this theater of the absurd that we are talking about. Negotiations, but nevertheless they want to involve even more parties, just so it would be as out of place as a saddle on a cow. Or rather, like a person looking for a fifth corner in a room, so they want to look for an eighth corner there. 1021. The more people participate in negotiations, I'll say, the more it looks like some kind of circus, little digression, simply because in real negotiations there shouldn't be anything like that. As they say, money loves silence, and negotiations love silence too. Until the very last moment, sometimes nothing could be heard, at least in the past, when people still remembered how negotiations were conducted. A war broke out, who fought isn't important, they just kept fighting. And then suddenly in one of them it turns out that we already have an agreement starting tomorrow. Everyone goes home. We don't extend, let's say, the subscription to the theater of the same military absurdity, and everything is fine. Now things are completely different. Now there are even peace talks here. President of the European Council Antonio Costa stated, for example, that EU leaders are ready to start negotiations with Russia. It should be understood from Ukraine's side, but why Zelensky can't start negotiations with Russia, I, again, don't understand. That is, Zelensky has already said that he won't go to Kyiv, he won't go to Minsk, basically. He'll go wherever Putin won't go. And here, apparently, he has some places he doesn't want to go, so I think we shouldn't expect a meeting between these two leaders. That's regarding the first block, which is purely about Ukraine and Russia, but we also have many other wars around the world, if you didn't know, for example, between Iran and the USA. And Trump suddenly cancelled the planned strikes on Iran for the evening, stating that a peace agreement has already been approved. However, now Tehran has stated that this isn't true, but for Trump it's like just keep quiet, someone is saying something somewhere, what's the difference? The main thing is Trump has repeated this for the 5th or 10th time. Initially, he stated that the United States would not. At first, he talked about bombing Iran if they didn't agree to a ceasefire, and then he started saying that the United States would not strike Iran on the evening of June 11. Since there is progress in the peace negotiations, and given that the discussions with the Islamic Republic of Iran were brought to the highest leadership of Iran and approved, that is, Trump cancelled the strikes and bombings on Iran that were planned for this evening. You have to understand that Donnie has quite a few business partners who are just dreaming about getting this peace. I mean, obviously, always a businessman. They are exclusively concerned about peace, especially those of them who are involved in the arms business. Watch the movie Lord of War with Nicolas Cage and a lot of questions about this might disappear. So Trump states that the final points of the agreement were agreed upon by all involved parties, both conceptually and in detail. At the same time, the Iranian authorities deny that an agreement has been reached, and the Israeli authorities also deny it and say that the agreement does not exist. Nevertheless, there are sources, these are Iranian officials, who told some parties that the negotiations did indeed lead to a preliminary agreement, but it still needs to be approved by the headquarters first. Khamenei is the son of Khamenei, who was bombed there in his own house, and now he is making the decision. So that's how things are, and on top of everything, Trump, in case Iran doesn't sign the agreement, threatens to seize both the president of Iran and its oil infrastructure, and apparently to move Iran itself somewhere far away from trouble, because, well, anti-gravitators are everywhere. Trump stated that American forces will deliver a powerful strike on Iran as early as tonight, and later plans to take control of Kark Island. Let me remind you, that's where the largest oil refining infrastructure is located, as well as other oil infrastructure facilities of the country. And right after this statement, he once again said that there would be no bombings. He made it up because someone asked him for something. There will be no bombing of Iran, and actually that's a good thing. Now let's move on to the bombardment of our unfortunate minds. That is, that substance which for powerful leaders replaces, let's say, the sound spectrum. And naturally there are many people. Let's take a look at all these wonderful people now. I'll turn them on and let's see who we'll start with. Well, first of all, we need to find someone who will open our program, as they say. Well, let's see. I don't know. They just danced the waltz. Victory, victory, victory. It didn't work out. Here it's 2-in-1. We tested the little TV, this small one, to make sure it works properly, and we showed it off. In general, everything in this world is wonderful. Now, what we have here are the source materials. We'll open these videos right now, and here's what we have today. Well, let's take a look at Deputy Dmitry. The deputy is telling us with a serious face that Russia is in a winning position. 3 men appeared on this screen, Mr. K among them, all with extremely serious, stern, and complicated expressions. What actually scares me most is that journalist on the far left during the conversation. It feels like he's about to grab a rifle and head off somewhere into the woods like a Hutsul to clear paths using the bodies of his enemies. But he's a very strange character. His look is just... Well, but right now, let's not focus on him, but on the guy on the right with glasses. I mean, the prince with the gaze. I would be completely against him right now.
I'm saying that Russia is currently to some extent cornered because their economic situation is catastrophic.
Let's put on the power glasses because figures of this level require it. Without the power glasses, nothing will work.
Next year, it will be even harder. And despite the rise in oil prices, which helps them a little, they simply won't have anything to produce weapons with. Putin is clearly not an adequate person. He faces a stalemate at the front, making no progress, while at times our armed forces of Ukraine are even advancing.
Well, it's just some kind of challenge. Right now, on Ukrainian television, including this very telethon, which is called Threaten Putin the Most, everyone is trying to outdo each other in threatening Putin. Anyone who seems to make the strongest threat is instantly sent somewhere, like the Caribbean. And here you have to understand that this very Laptin is a multiple-time winner, because he has already left for somewhere more than once without ever being any kind of working man. But we have Umilan. He's simply a legendary person who previously worked on Hyperloop issues from Elon Musk. And then he suddenly enlisted in the army after the war started and suddenly got discharged from it, claiming that his bone was broken, his ears were damaged, his interoral ganglion was injured, so he urgently needed to be discharged. And then he was accused of forging documents, and as a result, Umilan fled to the United Kingdom, where he is being questioned. A certain Dmitry Chekalkin.
Dmytro Chekalki, turning to the scandal with the SBI, who tried to serve you with some kind of suspicion. What are the next steps? What's going on with that?
That's what's happening with the case.
I treat this, just like all the previous cases, with absolute calm.
That's exactly why he ran away to the UK, because he treats all these cases, all these investigations with absolute calm. Umilan is not one of the timid ones, I have to tell you. That is...
And that's it, and I have it. I mean, I have it.
from Solomon, и это пройдет.
My job is to ensure worthy people run the country, not all sorts of trash. I believe I've accomplished this. Listen, I have achieved this.
It's about these powerful leaders. The main difficulty is not even figuring out some effects or fictions, let's say, from old jokes or something else, but to understand what the speaker is actually talking about right now compared to before. Well, I used to watch some Soviet programs. There, they went into a bar to the guys, roughly speaking, even in the 90s at the very end. There, at the end, they ask, what do you think about peace, about the whole world? What do you think about beer? Why is it that almost every guy sitting there is sitting with this big mug, with these cans, not even glasses, just regular cans? And it's connected without any swearing. He talks about what they ask him, and he tells it very well. It's actually pleasant to listen to. So the whole speech is divided into certain structural elements. There's a beginning, there's an end, there's this arc, if the speech is long, the main character, let's say, and there's a conclusion, a summary. But if you ask a modern person something like, what do you think about peace in the world? Yeah, you'll just get some nonsense, or like, what do you think about 5G towers? But there you'll get 3 times as much nonsense. That's why it's surprising, of course, how people can't clearly express themselves, can't, let's say, carve out a path of logic, not a clearing, don't confuse it, but a path whereby laying out their statements and some quotes along this path. In general, all this is a sign of a highly intellectual person. They have flooded the world, and we, dear viewers, are somewhere on the outskirts in the darkest forest. Don't worry, I hope the darkness will clear, the gloom will go away, and we will see each other as beautiful, bright-eyed intellectuals. But since that hasn't happened yet, well, let's hang in there. I suggest we hold on and not worry too much about it. Well, for now, everyone, go ahead and sign the contract.
Sign the contract, get assigned to a brigade, and choose your role. Because all the civilians are afraid, thinking that the whole war is just about infantry. No, there's plenty of work to do.
We go to work not as if it's some kind of burden. It's a joy for us, that's what I'll say. When we arrive here, there's usually something to do.